that deep seek does seem kind of crazy to me. Like, not that it's doing something new, but I feel like internal competition plus international competition, that's how you get some major breakthroughs, like the nuclear bomb or what's the other one, going to the moon. So I'm like, I'm still sticking to all of my initial stances around all of this AI shit. I think it's gonna be an astonishing and difficult next 10 years.
I disagree. So
Okay.
if one, the deep seek, to the best anybody can really ascertain, is them saying it's just as good, saying it can do this with less resources, and then a couple synthetic benchmarks. I do think that there's something to the fact that you should expect these models to get to a minimally viable product state faster, because the groundwork has already been laid. So like, OpenAI did all of this groundwork. So you should expect people to be able to move faster based on the shit that they've done. Yeah, exactly. Shortcuts. So I do think that it's truly almost as good, but I think that you're always going to have some people at the vanguard of this shit because they're going to put more resources to pulling it faster. And then you're going to have a Chinese company come in and do like the McDonald'sification version of it for a little bit cheaper. But we see that all the time with a lot of other services. And quite frankly, Apple is still Apple, Google is still Google, despite the fact that Chinese companies continue to do that same shit. So I think that competition is good, but I don't think that DeepSeek is really competition, right? I think the competition that we're seeing right now is still between like everybody chasing NVIDIA. But I think a lot of companies are putting a lot of money into chasing NVIDIA. But I do think that the Chinese companies coming after them are going to be able to like stand on the shoulders of giants for a little bit and make some strides. They're just never going to be the giants.
I do, but I disagree. I do.
Yeah, and before you tell them why you disagree, let me just real quick introduce everybody to the podcast. Since it might be a little bit confusing, I'd like to introduce you all to Waving the Red Flag, the #1 dating and AI and computer science podcast in the entire galaxy. So yeah, this is not really what it said on the box, but we about to talk about AI for a little bit. So yeah, why you disagree, Josh? Oh, sorry, and it's Eddie, it's Josh, it's Alvin. You know what I'm saying? Y'all know what time it is.
I mean, if you know what I'm saying, if you don't know, now you know, nigga.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying. But okay, so I feel like there's always going to be times when like power shifts between like different parties. China. Asian, not to be racist, but these goddamn Asians look.
These Asian motherfuckers.
These Asian motherfuckers look. They on a whole other time. All right.
As Bill Burr said, you just got to put the motherfucker after the race, and then
exactly.
You can't put it first.
These motherfucking Asians, no.
Yeah, no, that's crazy. That's racist.
That's racist. But no, so I didn't even catch that good shit because I naturally said Asian motherfuckers. All right. but So I believe that China is developing faster than we are, and they're also their workforce, their culture, even as abusive as it can be and problematic as it can be in certain areas, is more advanced than ours. Bro, their automobile empire is way more advanced than the U.S. This is way better. Like they won't even allow China's automobiles to be sold in America. They cost less. They're more luxurious and they have more features, practical features. I don't think it's a difficult stretch to say, oh, they could end up taking the reins when it comes to AI at all. With the head start that they did get, well, not even a head start, but just with the corners things that they did get, I think they just kind of like proves the point of, for one, they made a big splash enough to like make our stock market tank for like a little bit. Maybe it's not permanent, but it's still like, it's like, hey, these are the new kids on the scene. We're just now seeing what they can do and what's possible. And they've had spent millions and millions and millions of dollars less than what we have. Of course, by following the standard, fair. But the fact is, I do definitely believe that China will indeed take us over. And if, then the U.S. will try to do something to block him, then, all hell will break out.
Yeah. And I think that there's also like, because part of my initial view is like, it's not necessarily that China is going to dominate the US. like the thing that I've kind of been saying from early on is that we're going to see like successive major breakthroughs, which I would say is accurate to what we've seen over the last 6 months. Obviously, it's difficult to predict what the next 6 months will look like or whether that'll be sustained, but I'm predicting that it'll be something like that. And I think that what China does, even if they're not able to like make the same leaps that like from what we had in 2020 to what OpenAI did, like because they fucking changed the goddamn game, them as well as all of the generative like image and video folks, so Mid-Journey and Stable Diffusion, these major stepwise changes. I don't think that DeepSeek is a stepwise change, but it's we can do this too, even if you block us on the GPU like NVIDIA chip thing. And that all the main thing that does to me is make America work harder. And having that fuel up under the industry where it's like, this is now not just an industry, like companies in America competing to be top. This is now a national thing as well. That's a force that gets you a nuclear bomb because now we're racing. We're not just trying to compete in an economy. We're racing. And that's what I think is the danger here. But I also, to Josh's point, I think on top of that, China is going to do some mad shit. So
yeah. So several things on that one. So one, from a tech space, if you actually look at, so I think a lot of people focus on the conspiracy theories, and I made a lot of comments about how the Chinese, in terms of international commerce, do underhanded things, and people focused on like what they do say they're going to do, and say like the comments for example, and not the theft, right? So like nobody signs up to have their intellectual property stolen. That's the underhanded part of it. So a lot of what they've done is they've stole. So if you take away their ability to steal, they don't really do a lot of stuff in this space, because what they end up putting out in their home turf ends up being commodified. So you don't really have much incentive to innovate in those spaces, because everything's like a commodity. It's like everything's a black slab of a phone, for example, right? But anyway, all that to say is like a lot of the stuff that they end up putting out is not like top-notch product, right? Like a lot of if you take the conspiracy aspect of it out, the reason why you don't have Chinese cars over here is because their QC is horrible. Right. So like you see a video on YouTube and you see like, oh, this has really cool features. And then somebody actually looks at it and you see that like, oh, well, the panels actually fall off if you knock on them and all that kind of shit. So that's a lot of what you get. You get a McDonald'sification of the situation. And a lot of that is based on the economic theory of what it means to have to compete in a country where like everybody's trying to be in that space. And you have like over 1 billion people, right? Everything's a commodity, right?
Faster.
Exactly. You have to do it cheaper. You have to do it faster. You have to compete on price in a commodity market. So a lot of the stuff that they end up putting out is subpar quality because they're competing on price. The second thing is I do like the atomic bomb analogy, but when you look at the post-creation landscape, like the post-Manhattan Project landscape, right? You end up having some nuclear proliferation. You have a few countries that have a few countries that have it and then don't have it. But ultimately, even though you have, depending on who you ask, 9 or so countries that have it, you really still only have 2 players, right? So it's Russia, the United States, and everybody else by like a country fucking mile, right? Sure. Like it's like you have 2 players that have thousands of nuclear warheads, and then you have these people that have like 80. So like I think that when you think about it in that context, and you think about how global powers can like suppress and outcompete and outspend, and the space race is another example, right? Like a lot of people have like done some international space stations here. A lot of people like been to the moon.
No, it's literally only the ones.
You know what I'm saying? A lot of people ain't even landed a rover on the moon. Like it's a big deal when somebody lands a probe on the moon. So I do think that when you really put that stuff into context, I think competition is good, but I also think that people don't really put the context on what competition really looks like long term, and how some people compete better than others. And for like the last 100 or so years, it's usually like 1 to 2, maybe 3, like people competing in any given space. Like we're very much an oligarchical economic society eventually.
See, so I think that that's a good additional bit of nuance, but doesn't really negate the concern that I have, which is that this is a sprint and there's a finish line which has scary consequences. So we can talk about the atomic bomb and go, okay, we don't have major nuclear proliferation, 500,000 people were eviscerated instantly because of that competition. So you have a sprint, you get there, America figures it out, boom, 2 major Japanese cities get blown the fuck up. Then we try and regulate the shit. That's what happened there. And so, and that's basically the exact same analogy that George Hinton, the one who got the fucking, Jeffrey Hinton got the fucking
Nobel Prize,
for this AI physics shit. He used this analogy. So I'm not making this second analogy up from that, which is that when you have this major competition sprint, and then everybody's just going, can we do it? Not should we do it? So regulation is just to the wind. We just got to dominate and win. We don't get regulation until something horrific has happened. So that's my first point. So I'm saying we're going to see crazy, crazy advances in the next 5 years, 10 years that we need to look out for. And 2, I would say that since the nuclear bomb or landing on the moon that we're talking about is ASI, so we're talking about artificial superintelligence, which I would argue is, I'm pretty compelled by Altman's argument that AGI and ASI will arrive simultaneously, because what AI is that each time we add a function, it's only noteworthy if it's superior to a human. So by the time we can do everything that a human can do, we can do each thing that a human can do better. So as soon as we can do all of it, we're doing all of it better. So that's AGI, ASI happen simultaneously. And then it's just a matter of like scaling. Do we have enough nuclear power and enough data centers to be able to like actually, what's the word? Not distribute. What's it called? Like launch the shit or whatever.
Go to market.
And so, say again.
Go to market.
Yeah, go to market. I was looking for something that was like militaristic and punchy. You know what I'm saying? Like send the troops and like scramble the jet, some shit like that. But
scramble the jets on that ass real quick.
Yeah, but because ASI is a totally different type of weapon or type of achievement than the moon landing or what's the other one? The nuclear bomb. I think once we cross that line, there's steam that continues behind it, even if the competition element dissipates the way that it did with the space race. So if we go, we landed a rocket on the moon that can self-launch itself to Mars, instead of, we still have to continue to work to do this, but the Russians kind of lost, so nobody gives a fuck anymore. So I think it's a totally different kettle of fish. And for all of those reasons, I maintain my view that the next 5 years, next 10 years is going to be majorly destabilizing.
And I very much want to hear Josh's thoughts on it, because I think that fits nicely in terms of like where China fits into this, if I think hard enough. But I think if I look specifically at nuclear and I look specifically at MAD, I think that you're correct not to discount the loss of life that caused, but I also think that people discount the fact that we have a technology that literally gives us the ability to destroy ourselves at the push of a button, and we have not done it. Like I think that's what people disagree, right? Right now, the American and Russian militaries could destroy the entire planet. And I'm not saying destroy the entire planet in a way that like people think that like climate change is going to destroy the planet when that's not what any model says with climate change. You mean destroy like I mean literally there are 5 to 6 countries that could literally destroy the entire planet, and it has not happened. So while I don't want to discount like the sacrifice that happened from that perspective, I do think that people are capable of managing something immensely powerful and immensely potentially horrific in the wrong hands. And I do think that on some level the profit motive actually supports that. Like, you can't profit off shit if you destroy all of it. So while I do think that AI the lack of AI regulation is a supreme worry, right? I maintain, just based on prior conversation, even if not this one, that it's going to happen slower than what you think it's going to happen at, like in terms of reaching that like technological singularity that it has to be in order for it to be a danger. And I also think that there's at least a 50-50 chance that we can regulate it to a point where like it doesn't like supremely like destabilize like everything, to a point where like it's irreparably harmful. And again, the example of that is the fact that like right now there are people who could push a button to destroy us, and we're here.
I think that, Pete, for one, the only reason why those people just have not pushed that button is because it's just not worth it. The win for doing that is just simply not there. The game for doing that is just simply not there to where it makes sense.
Yeah.
That's literally the only reason why. And then of course,
Haha,
it's
we
like,
both gonna die. I'm like, all right.
exactly, like, yeah, mutually assured destruction. Like, that's the only real, I think, big reason that we have not totally killed ourselves just yet, is because the reward just is not there. Now when it comes to AI, it is still such a very new field, and like people are racing to put together policy right now in terms of implementing like some like boundaries, restrictions, or like how do we control this thing, or like as best as they can, maybe like right now. But it is evolving at such a rapid rate where I do think we will get some policies sooner rather than later. Like I'm thinking like 5 years max around AI versus like the long haul, because people responded to COVID in 2020 relatively fast in terms of a global effort in terms of getting like a vaccine out there. We had vaccines within like a couple months after that whole breakout happened. So it'll be the same thing with AI, but again, like we also have to take into consideration the U.S.'s stance on these sorts of things. Is the U.S. just going to continue to be a bunch of dicks and cut itself away from the world and like leave other world treaties, such as the World Health Organization, who, because that was the organization that we partnered with in responding to COVID, and we left that. So what does that mean for like technological advances? Is the U.S. going to just continue to be on this bullshit? Like, oh, we're the best and brightest. We want to go recruit for ourselves, but we really need y'all foreigners. Like niggas from China, come here real quick. You know what I'm saying? And we'll deport your ass as soon as you like buck against the system. You know what I mean?
What did you say? You want a longer coffee break? Get the fuck up out of here.
There's something in
Get on
China.
a plane.
Is that Mandarin out here in that bitch? You said something I couldn't understand, motherfucker.
Get the chopper.
So
yeah,
that's my stance on it.
Yeah, I think that taking both of those into account, I think for the purposes of like a productive conversation about AI and the danger of AI proliferation and escalating function, is let's take the Terminator shit off the table, and let's take even the war shit off the table. When I think about Reaganomics, or I think about neoliberal capitalism, and when we're trying to make the comparison between that and the first two uses in wartime of a nuclear bomb and what that loss is, what I'm imagining and talking about is if we have a 10-year period during which almost all intellectual and creative work, the labor value for it drops to nearly zero in a 10-year period, the impact of that to people's like lived lives, even if yes, there's a human being that we can ultimately like, it never becomes self-aware, it never starts building it, self-improving itself, it never starts building Terminator bodies. It just takes one policymaker to turn off the switch and say, no, you can't do that anymore, no, shut down that nuclear power plant. During that 10-year period, motherfuckers are eating rats, and that's the main thing that I'm talking about. So we end up in a cyberpunk dystopia as we try and figure out how to reverse a bad economic system that never regulated for the fact that people need to work in order to live. That's the thing that I'm talking about. And I think that comes up underneath all of the valid points that you made, Alvin, but all of that is still true regardless of the fact that yes, a government can stop it and stop it from blowing shit up. Yeah.
I also think that from that perspective, I think that people discount how globalization makes certain economic blocks super resilient to that kind of thing, right?
Okay.
So for example, let's say, just as an example, I could think of others, but just as an example, let's say it happens in the United States first, and we go into that dystopian thing, and like everything, fucking falls apart. Or let's say Japan. I think Japan is probably a closer example, right? They're just gonna fucking print money. They're just gonna fucking print money, and they're just gonna give it. And then what they're gonna do is they're gonna say one of two things. They're gonna say, my economic block is so important to what you do, China, or what you do, EU, that you're gonna forgive my debt, and you're gonna let me still borrow money from you, and you're gonna still sell me shit, and I'm gonna recover. Or as I keep trying to explain to a lot of like Gen Z and Gen Alpha kind of people, if I'm the United States, I'm going to say, I have 6,000 nuclear warheads.
Okay.
Do you really want to call me on this debt? And then it, you know what I'm saying? Like I'm just thinking about like I don't think people fully, I think people think they know, but I don't think people fully understand like some of the economic crises that we've like managed. And I like for example, like the 2008 like housing crisis was monster.
A lot. Yeah.
Like I don't think people fully understand this, or like the recession that happened immediately at the start of the pandemic was weird. It was short lived, but it was massive, and people acted quickly to make it as short lived as it was. But like shit was happening that like had never happened before. Like people weren't going. I won't get into it too much, but people weren't going to like the U.S. dollar and treasury bonds as a safe haven anymore. People were fucking withdrawing their money and holding their dollars. Like it was fucking draining. But again, like so I do think that people don't realize like how resilient the concept of globalization has made economies from that perspective. Like you need me, you will prop me up, because if I fall, you fall.
So now we're talking about like New Deal era shit where we're going, all right, we rapidly understand, all right, it's been coming up. Fuck, we've hit AGI, nobody's employable all of a sudden in like a year long period, nobody can hold a job. We're going to start printing a fuck ton of money, UBI, checks for everybody. If you don't like forgive our debt, you know, other countries, everything's going to fucking collapse. So we all work together a la COVID. Is that the idea of what you imagine will happen when what I'm predicting is going to happen in the next 10 years happens?
If that's what happened, yes, I do think. And again, my main thing is that I think that we have more time than 10 years. But yes, if it happens in 10 years, because you know I've been wrong before. I think me and you have a long series of like both of us being wrong and it falling somewhere in the middle. But so
some other shit, whatever Josh said, probably right most of the time.
Josh be right, Josh be in the middle, and Josh be right as fuck.
Yeah.
It's nuance, baby. Y'all just gotta stop picking sides.
I'm looking for whatever his stock portfolio say. You tell me what to buy. Yeah, I'll say there's maybe too much hope in how much suffering the United States government is willing to tolerate in its populace before it triggers those kinds of measures. And I think that we go, because since the 80s, we've allowed shit to get bad as fuck. And as long as the wheels don't come off, it's fine. And people are still starving. People still can't afford they fucking the fact that we've gotten to where we've gotten with healthcare, that I consider that a crisis. The fact that we've gotten to where we've got to with healthcare and it's still not considered an emergency makes me go, AI is going to have to is going to have to get fucking catastrophic to where, and I'm like, yeah, but people are still going to have to live in that decade-long period before it gets to catastrophic, and I'm terrified of that. So, yeah. But speaking of using that nuclear weapon deterrent to goddamn get other countries to just bully them into doing some shit, how we feeling on the first, like, I don't know, the first 20 days, first 30 days of Trump?
The first year?
The first year, it's been long. They've been measuring that shit in dog years, man. The other day I was saying like,
it's a red flag.